Another good example of this is computer science and coding. Anthropic's Cloud 3 just came out and its coding capabilities, it just crushed GPT and Gemini. Okay, do people even really need to code anymore? Why would we teach anybody to code? Because AI can code better than we can. But if it's just writing code and people don't understand what code it wrote, they don't even know how to analyze or interpret it. And they just go, sounds good. I'll put this code snippet in. And then it breaks.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to We're Only Human. I am Ben Eubanks, your host. Really glad to be here with you and so glad to have my good friend Christopher Lynn back with us. We're going to be talking about things like how AI is or isn't replacing jobs, some of the fun conversation there, some things in the news. We're going to talk about some things that we are both really curious about around how is this affecting the development of skills and people who, especially who are junior in their roles and developing up into their future career paths, all that kind of good stuff. So Christopher, so glad you're back with us.
Hey, I always enjoy our conversations. So the fact this time we just happen to be recording it is just all the more fun. So looking forward to it.
I'd say it's a bonus for everybody else, but we'll have to wait till the end of the conversation.
Yeah, they may not feel the same way by the time they're done listening to it. I don't know. Jury's out still.
We'll find out for sure. So before we get into this, some of the audience here does not know you and the good work that you do. So would you take a minute or two and tell more about who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, if you do find anything out about me, you will find I'm a father of 7 and a husband first. That is my primary calling. But on the work side of things, I am the chief learning officer at ChenMed, a healthcare company. So I lead the enterprise learning and skill strategy there. But then I also am the host of Future Focused, which is a podcast all about really helping people stay 10 steps ahead of where things are at. Because we live life at this intersection of business, technology, and human experience, and it is moving fast, to say the least.
To say the least. Awesome. I'm so glad when someone talks about their personal side first before the other piece of that, because that matters most to me and that matters most to you. I know for sure, and that's just knowing your background.
It's an important thing because I think about the next generation and I go, the decisions we're making today, these things we're talking about today have long-term implications. It's not just like, how's this going to affect my life and my profession? It's like, no, this is actually going to affect how my kids grow up and how my grandkids grow up. So it matters.
Yes, 100%. All right. Good stuff. As I mentioned, teasing out for the audience there a minute ago, some of the things we're going to talk about. One of the things I mentioned a headline a minute ago to you, and you gave me the nod, like, yes, to this one. So one of the stories in the news recently, Klarna, they're a buy now, pay later company, kind of consumer financing company. And they came out recently and their leadership was talking about how this proudly boasting, like, we just replaced 700 employees with this new AI tool for customer service support. And they were talking about how great that had been for the company. And I think a lot of us, when we hear about AI, that's one of the things we're fearful of, we're concerned with. And I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that. I think you had already heard the story a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's like, oh yeah, that's the wave, it's coming, it's going to hit everybody? Or what are your thoughts?
So I think we're going to see examples of this coming. Mm-hmm. So that's where, like, I don't think it's helpful for people to hear these headlines and then go, oh my gosh, this is going to happen everywhere. Are there going to be companies that, in my opinion, are going to foolishly make this mistake? Yes. Mm-hmm. The ones I know, other than that one, I already know some companies and have worked with some companies who have made similar, not on the scale that Klarna has. And they've learned the hard way that it's like, you thought you knew how all this work happened. You thought you knew what was around every single corner. You thought technology was so far advanced it could replace people. And then you got into it and suddenly you started realizing there's a whole lot more we didn't know and didn't expect. And the tech's a lot less mature than we thought. And humans are far more advanced than we often give them credit for. Mm-hmm. And what I can say from at least the folks I've talked to who have made this mistake, and having been involved in the cleanup crew on this, it's a lot harder to clean up the mess than it is to avoid getting into it in the first place. I do think, and I know executives are talking about, where might we be able to augment our staff or replace staff or these other things? So it's a real conversation that's happening. And I think denying that is foolish. But I think this fear that comes with it of like, oh my gosh, is there going to be nothing left for us at the end? I actually think that's actually coming from a limited knowledge set and a limited creative mindset of where this stuff can actually go.
Excellent. Okay. I'm glad to hear that from you, but probably not a surprise for me to hear that from you. I expected that. Someone who spends time thinking about developing, learning how people can grow their skills. That's a piece you look at that world through. The thing that I see when I heard that headline, I was like, the first thing I thought is, oh goodness, people are going to see this and think, okay, what about me? I'm worried about myself. How do I not see myself in that reflection there? And the other thing is when companies talk about these things, they don't tell us that, by the way, we still have X number of people who are doing things that are this level of difficulty, like 2 layers up. Those people that were replaced by that, many of them might have been doing things that could have been handled by some basic chatbot in the first place anyway, or a good knowledge base on the website, a good FAQs could have answered a lot of those questions. Instead of having customers reach out to ask those things, we could have handled that. There was a story I read yesterday, completely unrelated. A company said they heard a story about Jeff Bezos and how he was saying that when someone reaches out to our customer service, that's a failure on our part because we haven't done a good enough job of educating them on the front end. And the guy said, actually, when someone reaches out to our customer service, it's a chance for us to remind them why they want to work with us. And so that's not a failure. That's a touch point. That's a moment.
It's an opportunity.
To reconnect with them. Yeah, it's an opportunity to reconnect with them and remind them, hey, by the way, you could be using them over there, but they see you as a necessary evil to the business and you're an expense. We see you as, this is a chance for us to help you even more. And I think different philosophies, different approaches.
It's different philosophies. And it also, you hit on 2 things there. One is there's always more details that we don't see. So I saw a study, I actually released it this week on my weekly update on what's going on. The University of Arkansas came out with a study that AI crushed humans in this creative standardized test. It's more creative than human beings. Of course, that's the headline, gets everybody to click, goes, oh my gosh, AI is taking over the world. Then you actually read the details underneath it and you're like, no, actually it didn't. In fact, the way they structured the stuff, like, should we rethink how we assess creativity? Yeah. There's a time for us to revisit what that looks like. But this test does not prove that AI beats humans. And even the whole thing, one of the things that I just laughed about is I'm like, yeah, you had humans prompting the AI what you want. Like, so what do you mean the AI beat them? You needed humans to get it to beat anything type of a thing. So it's inconclusive. And then I think the other thing is, I do think there are people who are going to over-index on AI and they may get this surge of productivity. Like, Klarna may do that, right? They may have streamlined all this stuff, but AI will only optimize and keep things going at a certain level. And as the rest of the world catches up with that, you lose your competitive advantage. And that's what I see with Klarna is like, okay, maybe you did. Maybe you actually did wipe out all your employees and now you have chatbots doing this. Where you are right now is the best you're ever going to get, which might be competitive now. But you're not going to have the innovation and the problem solving and all this other stuff, you're seeing around corners, predicting where things are going because AI doesn't have context. And so what's going to happen is, great, maybe you just saved yourself a bunch of money right now and you wiped out, but the damage you did to your brand, nobody's ever going to come want to work for you ever again. Well, the long-term effects of this, it will catch up with you in the end. And I think that's where this short-term thinking that we're just trained to do this. We just think to the end of our nose and we're like, what could possibly go wrong? Look at social media. Hey, what if everybody got on this? And then, oh my gosh, depression rates are high. People are lonelier than they've ever been. Like it's leading to suicide. And you're like, oh, I guess had we thought about long-term implications of this, we might have avoided it. And I think we're in this hype phase right now where everybody's just running and not necessarily thinking about where they're going.
I heard you when you said that a minute ago, it translated from like, we're winning short-term gains, we're sacrificing long-term value back to the organization, back to our customers, all those things.
Exactly.
Okay. So the answer isn't either or, it's some kind of and solution. You talked about augmenting a minute ago. And so some of the studies that have come out had looked at people in customer service type roles, things like that. Said, look, the junior staff are getting more benefit from this because it's making them more productive on a level like they were a more senior employee who has more experience, more time in the seat, more times supporting or going through these use cases and problems. And at face value, that seems like a good thing. Like, great, that we can get performance up more quickly. We can get them time productivity drops. That's more value from each employee we're employing. Those seem like good metrics. But one of the things I want to ask you as someone who has spent a lot of his career focusing on developing and growing employees, what does that mean for them? Because they're not actually learning how to do those things. They're not actually building that skill of interacting with someone. The only skill they're honing is how to query an AI system. And it's not on actually how to serve a customer. So what are your thoughts on that and its impact on skill development long-term?
So I think this is where there's a real opportunity for us to deconstruct work and skills on a much more molecular level than we ever have had to in the past. Because another good example of this is computer science and coding. Anthropic's Cloud 3 just came out, and its coding capabilities, it just crushed GPT and Gemini. Okay, do people even really need to code anymore? Why would we teach anybody to code? Because AI can code better than we can. But if it's just writing code and people don't understand what code it wrote, they don't even know how to analyze or interpret it, and they just go, sounds good, I'll put this code snippet in, and then it breaks. They're like, and now what do I do about it? So I think we have to actually break this down and go, is it really they need to know all the details of the code? Do they need to understand the fundamentals of computer science and how logic and that works so that they can start to problem solve? And honestly, underneath this, there is a foundational set of human skills that are at the core that I think new people, young, early, old in their career, it doesn't matter. It's like, we're just going to need to keep growing in those areas. But again, this is also why people need to be in the workforce, because you need the people who have been around the block to contextualize this stuff, to help problem solve this stuff. You need those people, but their role looks different, because you may have that junior customer service person that like, okay, I just got this, I prompted the thing, but now they need to have that connection to somebody where they go, okay, like, why did this happen? Or this didn't work quite as I thought. Or things go south, they can call the helpline and go, hey, can somebody come help me troubleshoot this? And I think that's where we just have to rethink the social fabric and the skill behavior side of what's really going on at work. And I don't think anybody has the answers yet. I was on a panel this week with a bunch of CHROs, and I pushed this, and they all just went, yeah, we haven't done it. Like,
Great question.
How? I know. And they're like, how do we even get into this? And I'm like, the kind of funny part is like AI, like you need AI to help get through this, because there's more data and more information that you need to process than is humanly possible. So the only way you can make sense of it is with AI. So it's complicated right now.
As I heard you talking through that example there, one of the things I thought of is when I'm teaching AI to a group of HR leaders and trying to get them comfortable with the idea and how it can be used, I talk about ChatGPT and some of the use cases for that. And I say, listen, everybody talks about this being a great tool to get someone junior up to speed, but think about this through the lens of someone who's done this for a long time. After you do X, you do Y. And after you do Y, you do Z. Someone who's very junior will not know that Y and Z are actually going to follow that. And so they query, they get the answer, and like, okay, great, I'm good to go. And the example I give is if you're putting together a leadership development course, someone out there has probably got some list of, here's the great ChatGPT prompts. And it's like, okay, ask her a syllabus or an outline for the course. Like, how many of us are done then? No. But someone who doesn't know what's next won't know what question to ask. And so I take them through this series of steps like, okay, I need a script to get my leaders excited about this. I need to put together a feedback survey after we're done. I need to, I go through all the steps that are wrapped around that and say, listen, someone who's junior doesn't know all these things even exist. Or if they do, they're very abstract in their mind. Someone who has some experience, as you were saying a minute ago, is going to be able to say, okay, here, layering my expertise on top of that as a human, here's where we can extract value from this AI system. And it's not from some very surface level, okay, just write this email that convinces my leaders to do X or Y. That's not enough to make all these other things go.
No. And I think at that, a big area of focus for that I put a lot of emphasis in is that operational excellence. Like, what does the sausage making process actually look like, and what is good? And a lot of organizations, if you actually ask them, how does this get done at your company? It's usually this, talk to so-and-so, they do it. And that person's, I do part of it, and that person does. But honestly, it's a black box, much like AI. And I think this is where companies actually need to take the time to go into it and go, how does this get done so that we can understand, where do we need people? Where do we need machines? How do we optimize this? And then going back to the AI, the role of people, AI does not handle exceptions. That's fundamentally the thing with AI. It's designed to do like, this is how it works most of the time. But you want a practical example of like, you want to send AI down a tailspin, go put a road cone on an automated car self-driving car and just watch it shut down because it's like road code on the hood. Like, what do I do with this? I'm trained not to hit. Where a human just doesn't think twice about it. They're like, that's dumb. There's a road cone on the hood. I knock it off and keep going. And that's the thing. When we think about how much stuff in work, 80% of it is consistent. So even when we get the operational process, okay, maybe that part can start to be more automated, but that 20% that goes off the rails or the exception to the rule or whatever, you don't want a system that is trained to go, this is exactly how we always think about any company. That person in your company that's like, this is how we do it. We always do it this way. I never think about, they act like a robot. They're the biggest inhibitor to productivity and success in the company because you're like, geez, Louise, Bill, this is a different situation. And it's like the SOP says whatever. And it's like, that's what you're going to get to if you over rely on AI, is a bunch of bills just following the SOP, follow the SOP. Like I said, you might get an initial surge, but long-term SOP bill is going to annihilate your company.
I'd like to apologize on behalf of We're Only Human to any bills out there.
To any bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris, very broad brush over there to all
yes.
out there. The truth is that when you said that, all of us pictured someone in our mind exactly who that was. I pictured someone.
We all know that person.
We know who that is. You and I think I've talked this before, but there's this term in research called a kind or unkind learning environment. And a kind learning environment means we know all the rules. We know all the variables. When we complete a task, we know immediately if it was successful or not. It's like playing golf. Like I can tell if I know what good looks like. I know if when I hit the ball immediately, if it was a good shot or not, I can adjust next time. But how many of us exist in a work environment where we know all the variables, we know all the parameters and rules, we know immediately if we make a decision, if it's a good one or not. Sometimes you may never find out if the decision was right or not until years later. And because of those things, that's when it's really hard to program an algorithm to handle all the exceptions, all the variables, all the possibilities, because they can't consume and decide what's next. And people get wowed by, I can ask ChatGPT to write a song or a poem. It's not the same thing.
And what's interesting that you bring this up. So I had on my podcast the guy who wrote Siri. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about this. And I think this is one of the ways people are getting duped a little bit by this new generation of AI. Because going back to the way AI used to be, it was this, pre-programmed, you always go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It always goes this way. And if you didn't program it that way, it just shut down. So that's the experience we had. And what's duped us a little bit is generative AI is the opposite in that it'll do everything. It'll go A, B, Z. It'll do all the things. And so it's wowed us into going, wow, it's creative and it can come up with whatever. But what we have to do now with AI is we almost have to reverse our mindset and go, wait, what are all the ways those creative ideas could go wrong? Because now it's like, it's only going to think of the possibilities we told it to come up with. Now it's like, it's going to come up with all the possibilities. But we as humans know full well that 80% of those zany ideas are terrible. And so now we actually have to go, but we're getting fooled going, look how endless it is. It can come up with all this stuff. And actually going back to the University of Arkansas research, that was one of the things that was great. They didn't assess. So the AI engine came up with thousands more responses than humans could in this brainstorming session. Duh. It has access to all of human history and the internet. Am I surprised AI could come up with a faster list of more stuff? But if you looked in the fine print, they didn't assess the quality of any of the ideas. So you're like, okay, you came up with 1 million ideas. 999,999 of them are absolutely terrible, but you came up with a bunch of them.
Yes.
So are we saying AI beat humans because, the human only came up with 10, but man, 9 out of 10 of them were bangers. Yeah. But again, it's a shift. And so if you're operating off the old mindset, you might be like, but look how much more creative and capable AI is than people. And you're like, yeah, but it's almost dangerously more. You actually need people to rein it in versus before you were trying to push it out.
More is better. We've thought that for a long time. We've put those together in a head and thought, if we're in a brainstorming session, 20 ideas must be better than 10 ideas. And you're like, if the marginal 10 you get after that first 10 are all too expensive, too time consuming, you don't have the resources, whatever else, then that was wasted time. We should have figured out which of those first 10 we were going to implement, not generated 10 more ideas that are useless and never going to actually happen. So I think that's one of the things we've got to come back to. I like your sort of positioning that to say, instead of saying more is better, no, the right ones are better. And we need to focus in on that. And again, it doesn't come from asking the system which ones are the right ones, because we don't trust that. But we've got to come in there with our own experience, our own expertise, our own, I keep saying time in the seat, but our own time actually doing this work to say, those three are cool, but that works for a company who's bigger than us. These three are really good for companies who are in this other industry, but ours probably has some unique nuances that's not going to fit. But these other four ideas, now let's figure out which one of those are really going to work for our type of company, our size, our stage in business, all of those factors that we should know, we should be experts on if we're truly knowing the business as learning and as HR professionals that we're supposed to. We are the experts there. We need to put those things together instead of just saying, look at these 10 cool ideas, and someone's going to go through there and say, oh, some of those aren't any good. And like that.
And with one of the leaders in our organization I was working with recently, we talked about the fact that AI is great for the convergent part of the thinking. Hey, what are all the possibilities? Mm-hmm. And then we help refine it and go, okay, now let's refine this down. Let's bring this back. Because again, AI doesn't have the context. It doesn't know the contextual elements to help it. And it's not going to know it unless we tell it. And so that's where it's like, that's that role that we play in this. And everybody's like, oh, we'll just get AI to train it on context. And then we'll just pit the AI against it. And eventually we won't even need people. And you're like, I've followed that mad scientist pathway, and it just consistently leads to, it just doesn't go well. And the data's there. It's been there for decades. Human plus AI consistently crushes AI by itself every single time. Every single time. There's not one where it's like, no, once we get the right combination of AIs, it just crushes humans. It's like, no, actually, when you pair the two together, they outperform the most high-performing AI tools that exist. And it's been that way. Gen AI didn't change that. We didn't suddenly go, oh, all the data's wrong now. It's like, nope, still the same.
If someone out there is curious about what that term is called, by the way, a human plus an AI is called a centaur. When they're doing like chess matches and stuff, they put up human with a computer. They call it a centaur, which is the mythical half man, half horse sort of creature, because you get some of the best of both. And they find even a novice chess player paired with an algorithm can play better than even some of the best chess players, because of the very different ways that they approach the world, different ways that they see and experience things. So I'm glad you called that one out too. Let's talk about some, again, there's no right answer to this necessarily, at least the HR leaders you're talking to, the ones I'm talking to, and I bring this same conversation up, they're like, that is something we should probably think about, but they don't have the answer to it. So if we are going to think about adopting, using AI tools, all that kind of good stuff, what are the things we should be thinking about around developing the next generation? Any suggestions, any advice? I've got a couple things that are on my list as potential ideas I want to feel out with you, but any thoughts there for you? What can we be doing for someone who's junior to our learning team, junior to our recruiting or HR team coming in now? They may be using these tools, but like we've already said, this is a crutch. It's not necessarily the thing that's making them effective and long-term capable in that job. What are the ways we can be developing their skills so they have that foundation? I'll have to come back to something else in a minute. I had another conversation I missed referencing in this discussion that would tie in really well here. But any thoughts from you on people who are coming into this? What can we be doing besides just say, hey, you should be using that GPT stuff to be good? Any suggestions on that?
No, I think this goes back to, I was on a podcast recently talking about this from a parenting standpoint. We were talking about how a lot of kids growing up, and I was one of them, because parents didn't know the technology, they just handed it to their kids. And because their kids were tech savvy, they're just like, they'll probably be fine. And turns out they're not. In fact, it just goes awry. And it goes back to what I would consider, whether you want to use HR terms, mentoring, a term I prefer is like discipleship. Mm-hmm. I think this goes back to, we need to connect people with this. Now, granted, I think there's some ways we can say there are some underlying skills that just every human being needs to be really good at and will only need to get better at. How do you assess risk? How do you make good decisions? How do you have strong interpersonal skills and things like that? Like there are some core skills that we just go, yeah, everybody's going to need to do it. I think the hard skills is one where you go, okay, I saw an article and I actually commented on it. Everybody, all the higher education companies now, they're offering BSs and MSs in AI. And I'm like, okay, we don't need the whole world. It was like the coding thing. Everybody needs to teach their kids to code. And now it's like, oh, actually, turns out, no, you don't. I think the diversity of jobs is the same thing. Like, I don't have a bachelor's in electricity or a master's in the internet. We don't need a bunch of people going out and getting are there some? Sure. But I think it's more this, all right, in the hard skills, let's figure out what people really are uniquely talented and gifted at. And then let's pair them up with people who are doing other things. And then they bring that tech side of it and they go, all right, but yeah, what's the wisdom and discernment that we need to use? How does this really work in a way? And I actually think more than ever, this cross-generational team of people who come together and go, all right, you got the experience. You've seen all the exceptions. You've been doing this forever. I'm coming in. I've got this. Like, how do we connect people together and actually do that? And I think that's actually one of the biggest things that we need to do as we think about this next generation coming up.
I think that's such a good, I'm making notes over here as you're talking, like, this is wonderful. So you referenced actually some of the human skills earlier, things like assessing risk, making decisions, interpersonal skills. I wrote those down because I think that's important. But I love that you're bringing this back to the hard skills piece too, because one of these companies is talking about replacing their workers with an AI. They're not replacing much of the soft skill stuff. They're replacing specific things that they were producing, customer interactions or whatever else. They're replacing those actual hard things that were being done in the past, those tasks and skills. And so I'm glad you're bringing that back into this conversation.
Because it gets lost.
It does.
Like, there's this, you see these headlines of like, human skills are the only thing we're going to need in the future. And it's like, no, we're still going to need these hard skills. If anything, we're just going to need to apply them in very different ways. And that requires a lot of context and wisdom.
I'm imagining the sliding scale of where that could go. Like, I need a certain degree of hard skills, but then I'm also going to have this other, and today it may be 80-20, in the future it may be 60-40, but knowing how those things are shifting over time, again, that's going to require some continuous measurement, some really close watching, all those kind of things. So I remember that story that I was thinking a minute ago that kind of occurred to me. I was talking to an HR executive the other day, CHRO, and she was telling me that one of the challenges they have, like every company, every generation has had the problem where you have someone that's new and they're like chomping at the bit, like so excited to get started. And they want to jump like 3 levels up the ladder and start doing the stuff because they don't want to spend time paying their dues, like learning the ropes, all that kind of stuff. And we were talking about that in the context of this AI conversation, because I said, listen, I think about the work that I could do as someone who had been in HR for 6-7 years was very different than the quality and level of work that I could do as someone who'd been there 6 or 7 months. And if I had not spent the early part of my career building those skills, building that foundational knowledge, everything else, even though I got a degree in it, building that practical hands-on experience to know that later on, oh, this may be what the algorithm recommends, but in reality, that's not ever going to happen. It's going to be path B. I wouldn't have known those things, wouldn't have had the wherewithal to be able to challenge that or push back on it. You just like, there's no anchor, there's no tether. And so you just go with whichever way the wind blows. And that was one of the things that we talked about. And I thought, I haven't thought about that in the context of this for like how this connects this bigger conversation, but I feel like it does, because we've all seen, or we might have been that person at one point. Like, no, I'm ready for responsibility.
I think everybody in their early 20s was one of those, like, I'm looking at how dysfunctional everything is. And boy, if I could just come fix it, I see all the problems. And then you're like, oh, actually, I don't know as much as I thought I did.
Yes. We all learned that one the hard way. Once you get a broader view of things, you're like, oh, maybe that problem wasn't as narrow and limited and as easily solvable as I thought that it was. So I think that one ties into this. Okay. So I got some good notes from you on that one. So some of the things that I was thinking through around developing the skills, hard skills, human skills, whichever ones we want to talk about there, either one matter, comes back to that piece around paying your dues. And it's giving them chances to do things, giving them chances to actually experience, not just hear us talk about it, not just watch us do it once, but letting them do these things and letting them learn that, hey, sometimes you do that and it's the wrong thing the first time. And that's okay. Every one of us has made that misstep in our career. It makes you better next time around because you remember the pain of the wrong choice, or you remember like, hey, that didn't work out last time. And I've learned from that. I'm sampling and experiencing and experimenting with that. So that's one of the things on my list, is letting them do and test and experiment.
And I think if anything, this goes back to the earlier point of our discussion of why it's so important that we understand the work. And I think actually leaders, more than they've ever had to, need to actually understand how the work happens in their organization. Maybe not to the granularity of all the details, but you do need to understand this, because that's how you help people. I just even think to my own team. I have like up and coming folks and they're super smart and whatever. And when you just have them doing like the trivial tasks without the context, I don't blame them for going, if this is all we do here, I can come up with a faster, better way to do it. When do I get promoted? Type of a thing. But when you actually lean in and work with them and help them understand, like, hey, here's what happened. Here, you know what? That's actually not the way it works. Here's the bigger picture and all that. And in the past, we haven't always had human capacity to do that. I think AI is actually giving us more space to spend time in that, so we can go, instead of spending all this time doing these trivial robotic activities, let's actually lean into this. Like, let the AI do that. Let's work with people who are up and coming, show them the bigger picture, give them exposure to things, let them fail, do these other kinds of things. And I think that's something that we have always known it works better. The apprenticeship model, everybody knows it works better than you went off to college, got a BS in business, and now it's like it doesn't work that way. But yet we haven't been able to do that as much in the corporate sphere. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing. And I think that's the right path.
Okay. I love that. Look at you tying it back. Some great learning ideas there. One of the other ones on my list was they can use these tools. We talk about ChatGPT. There's others, right? Google's Gemini's out there now and these others, but they can use those tools, but they should not be presenting that as their finished product. Here's the answer to the question. No, it needs to be tailored. They need to be spending some time saying, okay, I've considered our values as a company. I considered the stage of business that we're in, right? This is a great idea for someone who's a startup, but we're an established brand. People know us. This is not going to be the same sort of impact. And thinking through some of those kinds of things, because that's going to teach them sort of what you're talking about there, like the bigger connection to the business. That's one of the things we've always harped on for as long as I've been around HR and the sort of learning world is we need to know the business if we're going to be effective partners. And if we're challenging someone to say, hey, I just did this quick prompt and here's the answer back. Did you consider these kind of factors? Okay, show me your work. Show me how you consider those things. Because if you did, that's going to make it even more relevant, even better result, better, more fitting to whatever the use case is than if it's just a generic, give me a leadership development curriculum. Okay.
And what's funny about this is it goes to one of the problems that I see happening right now in higher ed. And I think it's going to force us to rethink things. If you look at some of the conversations around higher ed, everybody's going like, oh my goodness, AI is writing these people's papers. How do we stop them from doing that so that they can demonstrate that they understand this stuff? And I'm like, or maybe we think about the fact that maybe writing a paper was a really crappy way to have people demonstrate that they actually know how to do it. Yes. And I think the same is true in the corporate sphere where you go, okay, maybe putting together the PowerPoint presentation and going and standing in front of a group and just delivering it, maybe that's a really crappy measure. And so instead of going, no, you need to make the PowerPoint. Are you kidding? Making the PowerPoint is not a skill that we really care about. Like, yeah, great. You made the slides look nice. Like, I don't care. Let AI do that. But what I want to see is how well do you engage with your stakeholders? How well do you ask questions and personalize and engage with them on what's really going on? And how well have you thought around the corners of things that maybe weren't considered before? That's a different kind of assessment of whether somebody is growing from a skill standpoint than, all right, make the presentation and send it to me, and then I'm going to gauge whether you're prepared or not based on the presentation. That's just it's a bad measure.
I think that's a common problem in learning broadly is how we assess or don't someone's ability to do that thing we've taught them. So I think that one also is a really good one there. And just understanding their readiness to think about that. You talk about asking questions no one's ever asked or thinking about this in a different kind of way. That's hard for someone who's new, who's junior to do that. They may have fresh vision, which is a good thing. Sure, ask that question, right? I love getting someone who's new to it because they don't have, we've already tried all these other 10 ways, like asking about those 10 ways. Maybe now is the time. It didn't work years ago for whatever reason, but now is the time it could bring those fresh eyes and fresh perspectives to the table. I think that's a really, really good way of looking at that. Okay.
But I think it goes back to what AI is showing is it's showing us how little we actually understand about skills and behaviors.
Yes.
And how focused we are on the stuff. We're so focused on the stuff that we forget about, but what matters is how do you get to the stuff? And we haven't spent time thinking about that. I think about conversations I have where people are like, we need people doing this in the organization. And I go, well, what do they have to do to accomplish that? And it's a lot of times just met with a blank stare of, what do you mean? We just need them to hit this many sales targets. And you're like, yeah, I know, but what do they do that helps them get there? And what differentiates someone who does that very easily versus somebody who struggles and works 100 hours to try and hit the same? And it's met with this like, I guess we had never thought about that. And it's like, maybe we need to start thinking about that Because if we can focus in those areas, then we can actually solve these problems instead of focusing on what we've always focused on in the past, which was hit that target. And if you hit the target, you're good. If you don't hit the target, not good. And we're just going to tell you, get better at hitting the target.
Yes. Get better. Be better.
Get better.
Good luck.
Do more.
Yes.
Be faster.
Yes. Next time you join the podcast, Christopher, if you could just be better, I'd like to give you that piece of feedback right now in front of the entire audience.
Give you that piece of feedback.
Just
just come back, be better, and we'll let you know. We'll tell you next time whether you did it or didn't.
Yes. We'll give it a suitable amount of time, like 3 years, and then we'll tell you whether you did it or not. So we don't want to get you too comfy with your feedback loop being very short and helpful. So we're going to keep that very...
Or we can fold into the corporate mindset and say, once a year we'll do it, and then we'll just show up and we'll go, here's whether better was or not met. And you'll go, okay, so what do I do to be better next year? And we'll go, we don't do that here. Yes. We'll just be back next year, and then we'll tell you whether you did better.
I'll tell you if you met expectations. All kidding aside, this is a fun conversation. I want to spend like another hour with you on this, but like I know the audience probably is like brains bursting because mine is right now. So this has been so helpful to think through some of these big things. Any last closing comments or things that are, I didn't say this and I meant to throw this one in there, or something you want to double down on for the conversation? Like, walk away with this as your takeaway.
I think what I would encourage people to walk away with, the theme that we've talked about, is this is the hard work that's ahead of us. That is actually really important, meaningful work. And I think that should be encouraging to anybody who listens to this, because if you're wondering, like, what are we going to do in this new AI world? It's like, this is the untapped diamond mine that has just never historically been gone into because we didn't have the time, the resources, or the need. There was the need, but we just didn't see it as much. Yeah. Now it's like, hey, there's a whole universe ahead of us that has gone uncharted. And the thing I tell people all the time is, when you think about AI, if you look at like what you're doing in the box today, it's going to be very scary if you think about where is AI's role in that. AI is actually creating a bigger box. Mm-hmm. Suddenly you go, oh, I guess that's not really so scary. So I hope that encourages people who may be feeling overwhelmed with things. But I think the other thing is, anybody who tells you they have all the answers to this is lying. We're all figuring it out. We're all fumbling through this and trying things and failing, and what worked here doesn't work, and what worked this week won't work next week. And I think that can be discouraging, but it also can be encouraging that there's not some silver bullet or holy grail that someone has cracked that you just need to get there. It's like, let's just all be humble and work together and recognize we're just in it together.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'll give you a shout out here, because one of the things that I do to keep myself up to speed on some of the latest and greatest, you talk to incredible people on Future Focused. You always have great ideas, as someone can tell from listening to you for more than 2 minutes today. And so I follow your email newsletter. What are the best places to get those? If you'll share, if you've got that really quickly, you can share that out. Yeah. If you can remember those offhand, I'll make sure you get the links in the show notes. But where's the best place for people to follow you?
Yeah, so I publish every week on Substack. So my christopherlind.substack.com is where I give what I call the Reader's Digest, or the Get Abstract version of some of the biggest things I'm thinking about every week. And so that's an easy way for people to find it. And then in terms of following, because I do a lot more content than that, and that's any of my podcast channels, you can find Future Focused with Christopher Lind. And that's where you can listen to it if you're a listener. If you prefer to watch it, I'm on YouTube and I put all the videos up there. So it really just depends on your flavor of how you consume it. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn. So that's the other place that you can, you search Christopher Lind. I think I'm the only one that probably pops to the top of the surface of the search results. I know there's a lot of other Christopher Lind. So if you're a Christopher Lind listening, don't think I'm thinking I'm like the best Christopher Lind out there. I just know because I'm so active with things, I tend to be at the top of search results.
You're not allowed to say that you're the best Christopher Lind out there, but I'm allowed to say that you are the best Christopher Lind out there. I'm so thankful to my friends and appreciate you for joining us today on We're Only Human. You're an incredible human being, great father, great friend, and an incredible contributor to the community. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, we gave you some great food for thought, some ways to think about all this AI stuff and what it means for you, for your organization, for your own career potentially as well. Take some notes from this, take some ideas from this, some inspiration from this to go and develop those human skills. Think the hard skills going to matter for you. We'll catch you next time on We're Only Human. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes,
sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.